Hi everyone, this is BritSimon. Let's talk about the slow start for DV2020 and what it means for the rest of the year. Okay, so I'd like to try and explain, just as a partner video to the video I published yesterday. I published a video with regard to the Bulletin progress, the progress we're making so far. And there's a couple of tools I wanted to show you, and there's a spreadsheet that I'm going to show you that will make some of my comments from yesterday a little bit more clear. I think that's probably needed. So first of all, let me just explain about the feasibility numbers briefly, and then we'll go on to some other topics. So on my site, BritSimonSays.com, you can click this link. By the way, since we're here, let me just explain. When I say read the FAQ, I mean click on this link. When I say go read my articles from July, for example, which I've been saying a lot recently, it means click on the archive here, and you'll see an archive of all of my previous articles on my blog. And if you want to see what I was saying in July, for example, you can see, for example, the lottery draw process explained. When will I be interviewed in DV 2020? These were my predictions. Some more analysis. There's plenty of very good articles that I wrote in July of this year when I was analyzing the initial release of the numbers. The selectee numbers for DV 2020. And so those are quite important articles to go and read. And you can see other articles that I've written as well. But please do learn how to navigate around my site, and particularly learn this button. So this is the search form, and you can search for anything. Let me just show you. I'm going to show you this. So you can read, you can find articles on my website fairly easily. You can read about, for example, all about the affidavit of and support on I-34. There's differences between the I-34 and I-64. You name it, you can find information very quickly by using that link. So please do use that, and please do read the facts. And if you're on the home page, you'll see in every year I update this basic questions. So this is the DV 2020 basic questions answer article. That's well worth reading as well. So really, I get a lot of questions which could be answered for yourselves very simply by reading either the basic questions document, reading the FAQ, having a look at the archive, or using the search. Okay, so those are tools available to you. Please use them. And here's what I was going to talk about, the feasibility numbers. So I've kept a record of previous year's visa bulletins, and I've compiled a record from sources, mainly the official sources, going back to 1995, I think it is. Right. So the very first visa bulletins, or the very first lotteries. So these are interesting to an extent. Now, let me just say that it's always a bad idea to try and compare this year to a previous year, and say, oh, I've noticed the numbers are the same as 2013 or something, so it will just go exactly like 2013. No, it won't. Every year is different. Whilst it's interesting to see what happened in previous years, it's not necessarily this year is not going to behave like a particular previous year or be like some other year. So I really loathe the questions when people say, is this going to be just like 2017, or is this going to be, please write what you mean, but don't try and compare it to a previous year, because I'm just going to get stuck in my head that you don't understand that this year is particularly different to previous years, and that every year is unique in its own right. Okay, so have a look at these by all means, and you can see the numbers for Europe and Africa and Asia. They're all there. So it's a wealth of information. I spend time compiling it. Please, by all means, have a look at this, but don't get hung up on a previous year. Okay, so for this year, I had said in yesterday's video that that the progress this year has been very slow, and to underline and demonstrate that, let me just show you what I mean in terms of the Visa Bulletin progress. The initial start of October was much lower than I predicted it would be, and than it should have been, frankly. But what was happening is that KCC were using their resources and other agencies' resources that they use for processing cases. They were using the time they had to make sure that DV2019 worked out as well as it could. They had really messed up the year by the introduction of the new document procedure. Um, a lot of people were expecting to be interviewed that were actually in the end never interviewed. People were not sure whether their documents were accurately submitted or not, or they didn't get the idea that they had to submit documents anyway. It was a mess. And KCC did, to be fair, they did all they could to schedule as many interviews as possible in the final couple of months of the lottery, which meant that they were putting their resources, their time towards that. And obviously they were having to answer questions from people who are wondering what the heck was going on. And so because of that, they decided, I believe, to have a low start to the year. And Africa, for example, started off at 2,500. You can see in the previous year it started off at 2,750. And when you bear in mind that the previous year actually didn't have, had a higher density, a higher number of cases per thousand, and a lower final case number than this year, that means that we were spectacularly lower than DV2019 as a starting place. And that, as you can see, was much lower than 2018 or 2017 or 2016 and so on, right? So 2019 was already an anomaly, and we got worse in 2020. And so it was, frankly, a very, very low start. And the number of cases per thousand or per 100 in this 2500 was very low. And that was what I've been telling people for a little while, and I don't think people have really understood what I've meant by that, but that's really what I've been saying. The progress then continued to be slow in Africa the next month, and then picked up a little bit in December, and in January it jumped by 7,000. That's more like the jumps I'm expecting from here on in. It should be in the sort of 7 to even 10,000 range, month to month. That's what I would be expecting. And it could even get faster than that in later months. So, hold on to your horses. It's going to be a pretty quick progression through the numbers because we've got to get to, something in the highest number cases that have been issued are 75,000 or so. So there's 8 months left. They've got to get a move on. So that's an illustration there. You can see the same sort of thing happened in Asia. Again, it was lower than some previous years. It was a little bit low, but we're actually quite nicely now ahead of previous years. 8,200 by this point is higher than any of the years going back to 2012. And this year was the last year that Bangladesh were in, I think. And it was also a redraw year. The DV lottery was completely messed up, so this one's a complete anomaly. You almost just have to ignore that one. But as you can see, we're at 8,200, and we're going to see fairly rapid progress. The highest case numbers are in Asia are around about 30,000, so we're going to see fairly fast progress to that point. South America. Similar sort of thing. We started slightly above, where it normally would be, but now we're double previous years, and that is because the number of cases per thousand, or the density, if you've read any of my analysis documents, the density, as I've explained it, is very low this year compared to previous years, so things are going to move fast. Same thing in Oceania. We're going to see very fast movements, and I expect Oceania to go current probably April or May, but it's going to move very quickly up until that point. Now, Europe is, as I mentioned, a little bit of a different case. We should be at a higher number than this right now. What's happened is they got to that number, they've got now people's documents, and they've had to fill in the gaps, if you like, with people who had become current in a previous month, in October, November, or December, already, but now have submitted documents. And so that meant more people were eligible for interview between 8,600 and 10,300, and the people that were already eligible for interview under 8,600, with the documents having now been submitted. So it kept the number low. I expect this number to start increasing fairly rapidly. The highest number in Europe is around about 55,000, and so we've got to get a move on to get something close to that. Whether we can get to that or not, I don't know, but we can get closer to that. We'll see how that goes. But these are the visa bulletin numbers, and it's fairly abstract, and perhaps is too difficult for people to understand what this really relates to. So what I've done is I've taken the official numbers of visas that have been issued in October in DV2020 and compared them to the official number of visas actually issued in October of DV2019 and DV2018. My source for this, by the way, is when I mention it's from the official numbers, it really means the Department of State. But there's a fantastic guy, a previous lottery winner, who cooperates with me on collecting information about SEAC data. This is the SEAC data, but he also publishes the official statistics, the monthly issuances for each year. So if we look at DV 2020 and we choose the month, we can see exactly down here which countries have had how many cases have been issued, and we can see it split up by DV1, DV2, and DV3. DV1 is the main selectee, DV2 is the spouse of a selectee, and DV3 is a child derivative. Okay, so you can see that Nepal, for example, has had 52 DV1 issuances, 20 spouses, and 8 children. Right, so and then you can see it any of the countries here. You can see by country how many visas have been issued. But in total, here are the regional totals of visas issued within the region for the month of October. This number is extremely low. If I total that up and put that on a spreadsheet, well, actually, I've put them here individually. There's those numbers, right? And they total 465. In DV 2019, they had in the same month, they issued nearly 4 times as many, certainly 3 times as many, 1,710. And in DV 2018, they did 2,700. Now, I've mentioned before, I think, that October is a fairly slow start. When the lottery is going at full pace and all the embassies are processing as fast as they can, we can see up to 5,000 or 6,000 visas issued in one particular month. And so to only see 465 issued in a month means it was a very, very slow start. Okay, and you can see, for example, in Oceania, 14 visas were issued in Oceania as a whole. And of those, I believe Australia had 5. We've got the numbers down here. So, Australia had 5 individuals, no family members, no spouses, no children. So 5 cases in the whole of October. That's they had at least 4 Tuesdays. They interview on Tuesdays in Australia, would you believe? Only Tuesdays. So Sydney Embassy would have interviewed these, and only 5 people were interviewed in the whole month. I mean, it's very, very small. And even though Nepal has had 72, 80 of the 465 visas have gone to just Nepal alone. So Nepal and Egypt, who traditionally have very high number of selectees and high chances of of issuance, low chances of denial in those two countries. Those two countries only managed to, just get about 120 between them, and that's the majority. That's, certainly, 25% or so of all of the visas issued worldwide. So really, I can't overstate this enough. This was a very, very slow start in October. Okay, so that is really what I meant by, it's been a slow start. It's nothing like what the capacity should have been, but it was really about closing out DV 2019. And so now, hopefully, you're beginning to see the relationship between what I say is a low start in the numbers and why I'd predicted more people should be interviewed, as opposed to, number of visas issued. Okay, it's just like a big funnel. You put in selectees and cases at the top, and you're going to get out a number of issued cases at the bottom. And there's a relationship between those two things. And so this underlines and shows the fact that it was a very slow start. Okay, now going back to Europe, Europe has accelerated the pace a little bit. Sort of 4,000 were added, nearly 4,000 were added in the month of November. But again, it's still not going to be enough to produce the sort of numbers of visas issued that we would expect. Same thing here, 8,600 here and 10,300 here. But as I mentioned, under that number, under the 10.3 number, more cases will have had their documents processed. So there will be more cases being interviewed than we saw in October, but still it'll be relatively slow. So there's a lot of work to do for KCC to get these cases scheduled and get them through the system. Okay, so Africa, same sort of thing. As I mentioned, it's accelerating nicely. I'm sure we'll see more cases. Africa might see, by the way, a month or two where the progress isn't as high as we would expect. And the reason for that is the similar sort of effect that just happened in Europe, where at some point there will be a sort of a number of, since KCC have asked everybody now, or most people, most case numbers, to submit documents. The majority of people would have submitted documents by now, and so as they're revealing more of these case numbers, they're also revealing more people who were previously current but hadn't submitted documents that now need to be scheduled in any given month. And so we might see, a slower month or something coming up over the next couple of months. People shouldn't freak out about that. It's just something that might happen. But I'm hopeful that we'll see sort of reasonable progress for the remaining months. Okay, so that's an explanation of the visa bulletins and how it relates to the actual issued numbers. The second thing I wanted to cover was something I'd mentioned in the video yesterday, which was explaining the normal situation with regard to a sloping number of selectees per thousand. So I've explained this in previous videos many times, and for those of you that have seen my holes theory video, if you search BritSimon holes theory, you should have seen the holes theory, or you should read the holes theory article, and I've got a video that covers this as well. And there's an article that explains in fine detail, how the draw is performed and why we have holes in the cases. Okay, so that article I wrote that back in 2015, I think. And it's as true today as it has ever been. It's accurate, although I call it a theory. It's absolutely 100% true. And then this video accompanies this article. So that's an interesting video to watch if you'd like to watch another video, how the draw process works. Okay, so you can always BritSimon. You can always find these, how the draw process works Right, you can always find these things, and if you just look for videos, there you go. Draw process explained. You can see a number of my videos. So Google is pretty smart at gathering the information and showing the information, generally speaking, from me. If you're in YouTube, you can have a look at my channel directly, or you can do a search, and you'll find my videos are sort of readily available. So if you search for if you search for DV Lottery or DV Lottery 2021, etc., you'll see a lot of my videos appear here, along with some others, and some other people who are previous winners. Lovely girl there from Germany, and she lives now, I believe, in Washington State, I think. She was a previous winner that had used my site for some information, and does that. I'm not sure about this girl. I think she won a few years ago, but she talks about being a lottery winner in previous years. That same girl. Anyway, so I've looked at a number of these videos. Obviously, the most accurate informational ones are mine. By all means, have a look at those. And the other thing you can do is just look for my channel, of course. You can click on my name. You can see the videos that I have. You'll see something, this is my view of the world, but you'll see something similar. You'll see a number of videos. So there's plenty of information that I've published, along with my blog site itself. Okay, so anyway, back to what I was going to explain to you. So if we look on this site, this is Zarthisius's website that collects the information from SEAC. SEAC is the place where we can check our status, the status of our individual cases. There is no DV2020 information in SEAC at the moment. It's made available from January 1 each year. I don't know why they do that. I know why technically they do that, but it's a very foolish, strange thing. So although we've got the official issuance data from the Department of State, we don't yet have the SEAC data. Once we have the SEAC data for DV 2020, we're going to get a much better understanding and more information about how many cases there are in each given range, etc. But what I want to show you today is to back up a video I published yesterday, which was, I mentioned there is a slope, a decreasing of case numbers, or a decreasing of density as the case number ranges go on. And this website shows that extremely well. So let me just explain what you're seeing here. We're looking at DV 2019 data for Africa. And you can choose the region here, and you can have a look at EU, for example, and you can see, for each 1,000 cases. So this is from 1 to 1,000, right? It shows the legend down here. 1,000 to 2,000. This is the block of data. Within that 1,000 cases, you'll see this box pops up, and you can see the number of cases issued, the number of cases which are a whole, and the number of cases which are no response, and so on. Now, since we have a similar number of selectees this year that we had last year, what we're going to see is this number was only up to about 31,000 last year. But our number has to go to 55,000 this year. And so what we're going to see is a lot more blue, or the blue is the holes. We're going to see a lot more blue throughout the whole period, and we're still going to see a slope like this. It's still going to go down gently like that. The reason for the slopes is limited countries. Now, I don't know which countries have been limited yet this year, but we will see some countries have been limited. And if you read my holes theory document, or if you watch the video, you'll understand better what that means. But we're going to see a slope. So, from 0 to 55,000, there will be more holes, right? So there's going to probably, instead of there being something like, so if you took this number here and we're just over the 60%, so let's say we're 62%. So actually the holes is 36.6%, so we're at 63% are actual cases. What that meant is in the first 1,000 cases, 366 of those cases were holes. Okay, there was no case. It was a case where prior to announcement of the lottery winners, the case was disqualified and it creates a hole. So let's say your case number one, you've got case number 1 through 10. Number 1 might be a real case. Number 2 might be a hole. Number 3 might be a hole. Number 4 might be a real case, and so on. So there are holes within the ranges. And so if you're at case number 10,000, there are not 10,000 cases in front of you. There are less than that. And in DV2019, the hole percentage started off at 36.6% in the first 1,000. I'm expecting that hole percentage now to start off at something closer to 50%. For EU, and it's going to be from 50%, and then there'll be a slope going down, so there will be more and more holes in later ranges. Okay, so by the time we get to the later ranges, at 45,000, 50,000, and so on, the number of cases per 1,000 is going to be quite low. You'll probably find only 250 cases per 1,000, something like that. So what that means is that the case numbers can move quite quickly later on in the year after we get through the sort of the busier or the denser number ranges. But like I mentioned, there's only a similar number of cases, and they're in a much wider range. So we have to see many more holes this year. So you'll see a lot more blue in the chart from January. Okay. Now we will be collecting this data in January. The SEAC data each year is available, and Xarthisius creates a scraping tool, and normally that's human powered, so we ask people to help us scrape data, and basically Xarthisius collects all of the activity from all of the people around the world doing this amazing job of entering cases. We're going to try and automate it this year. And we'll see how we go. We might need some human help, I don't know, but we'll see if we can make that automated. So we'll know about that in early January. Okay, so that's hopefully explained a little bit more about the holes and the slope, and you'll see the same thing in each of the 3 big regions. Africa, Asia, and EU, there will be this slope. If you look at Asia, this probably shows a little bit more clearly. There are a smaller number of holes, so 17% there, 25% in that 1,000, 20%. So let's say an average of around about 20%. And then all of a sudden there's a brick wall and it goes to a lower number. And then there's another brick wall later on and it goes to another lower number. These are where Nepal and Iran are limited. So you can see it in each year, and this happens every year. This isn't. We can look at each year and see the same thing. Again, if we look at Asia, Asia is very simple to see. Big brick wall, boom, and both Iran and Nepal were limited at about the same number range. It was around about there in DV 2018. And so it was very, very obvious to see what had happened to Iran and Nepal being limited at the same time. And then the density becomes quite low. The number of holes per 1,000 is very high. In that same year, Africa, again, had the same sort of thing. This area here, you can see the sad thing where this is in DV 2018. There was a cutoff applied to Africa, and almost no cases got issued in that after that cutoff. EU, same sort of thing, cutoff here. Usually the 2 countries, Uzbekistan and Ukraine are the U2 countries are the first countries to be cut off, but there could be now other countries that will be cut off a little bit early. Again, there was a final cutoff in place last year, so no cases after this point, after about 26,000, got any issued cases, got any issued visas. There was a cutoff in 2018. And so, you can look at this data. Hopefully you can see this link here, and I'll post it below. So you can go and have a look at this data, and you can see, quite clearly how there is a slope here, how there's a increasing number of holes in later ranges. And hopefully, I know we're going to see that same thing in Africa, Asia, and Europe this year. Oceania and South America don't have that phenomenon. They don't have any countries that have so many entries that they get limited. So they get a much smoother view. If we look at Oceania, for example, it's the same all the way through, and then it just stops. That's the point that it stopped last year, was about 1050, I think. About case number 1050 was about the last case. Same thing for South America. Where it has, oops, was I just showing you? Yes, I was showing you, whoops, I was showing the wrong region. There's Oceania, same sort of deal. And South America, yeah, same sort of thing. Okay, so you can see it's pretty constant until it just suddenly stops. And again, that's the same every year. Oceania and South America are exactly like that every year. They don't vary. There's a year where there is a cutoff. This is a DV2018. The case numbers continued until about 2,500, but there was high density, right? Almost no holes. And so by the time they hit 1,490, I think it was, 1,450, just from memory, it was they'd had enough selectees just to meet the quota. And so they stopped the visa issuing at that point, leaving these case numbers completely without any chance. Although we have similar case numbers this year, the Oceania is going to be one of the most dramatic regions for showing holes. I think there's going to be something like 70% holes and 30% cases in Oceania. So we're going to see a much more blue all the way through, and then a low number of cases just going for a longer point in time. Okay. So anyway, go and have a look at this. Hopefully that's interesting and helpful to you. There's a ton of data on this website. It's a really interesting website. There's SEAC data from each of the years, so you can actually pull this data out and do your own analysis. You can use some of these fabulous tools to figure out how cases are issued in a particular embassy. There really is. There's a ton of data here, and I'm very grateful to Zarthisius for making this available to everyone. This is data that I've been collecting for a number of years, so I understood it very well. But Zarthisius made it visual, a much more visual tool, and made it much more readable, and that's tremendous. That's helped a lot of people understand the process, which has been, very helpful indeed. As well as creating, by the way, the scraping tool, which was, absolutely invaluable in previous years. We needed that scraping tool. All right, so there you go. I'll wrap up the video now. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up on this video. Make sure you're subscribed and that you have turned on the bell, which means you'll be notified when I publish new videos. I've got a lot of information to give. My blog has a ton of information already. You could probably get through this process without asking any questions simply by reading the FAQ on my website and the basic questions pages. But if you do need to ask questions, they are best asked through my blog because the YouTube question and answer capability is kind of useless. It doesn't thread things very well, so it makes it difficult to find previous conversations. So it's much better if you can ask questions through my blog, and just make sure you quote your case number there, and give me a clue of your current position. So, by all means, ask questions on the blog. All right. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. And I'll see you on a video shortly. Bye bye.